Ladies and gentlemen, I go by the name of Arlo Maverick. I'm a man of many hats who just happens to rap, and today we're talking about studio etiquette. Over the last little while, I've been talking about things that need to be done prior to getting into the studio. Now that we're actually in the studio, let's talk about certain etiquette of how to actually function within the studio to make sure that you have a production studio session and make sure you get the best results out of your studio session while respecting the space that you are in. First and foremost, it is very important that you show up on time for your studio sessions. I know that it's something that should go without saying, but sometimes people tend to be late and tend to make a habit of it, which is not respectful of those who are there in the studio, whether it be the engineer, whether it be a producer, whether it be certain guest vocalists you have there, or even session musicians that are there to basically provide you with the service to make your project come out the best that it possibly can. So please be mindful of the fact that if you are recording, that you should always be prompt and be on time, actually be ahead of time. Now, when going to the studio, we tend to want to surround ourselves with people that help bring out ideas and so on and so forth. But at the same time, though, the studio is not a hangout. So it is very important that you bring people who are only there for the purpose of allowing the songs to get to where they need to be. So if there's someone who is there who is working on the song, definitely have them there. But if it's just someone who's there just to hang out, maybe it's your girlfriend, maybe it's your boyfriend, whomever it may be, if they're not contributing to the betterment of the project or contributing to the betterment of that song, then don't bring them there, because they'll just act as a distraction and you'll get less work done and you'll be paying for that as well too. With social media, it has become very important to actually have documentation and content that you can actually share with your fans. Now, it's totally fine in most cases to actually bring somebody into the studio just to film the whole recording process, but double check with the engineer to make sure they're totally fine. Double check with the studio to make sure they're totally fine, because at the same time, as much as you want to create content that you want to share with your fans, you also want to be respectful of this person's environment, because this is essentially their place of business, and on top of that too, it is their home. If you want to bring somebody in to document the process of you creating your album, then just double check with the person who runs the studio to make sure that's totally fine. And even if that person says it's okay, you have to be mindful of the fact that you don't want that person to be there as a distraction. You want that person to be there as a fly on the wall that basically captures the magic of you creating your project. A lot of times when you're in a studio, you're working with people who you have long-term relationships with, and this can be very dangerous. And the reason why I say it can be very dangerous is that sometimes the familiarity of somebody or just the comfortableness that you have with that person allows you to get into what we tend to call UPMs, unproductive moments. Now, when you're having unproductive moments that are completely taking away from the project, then you are paying for that, and it's very important to make sure that you keep those to a minimum. So when you're in the studio, keep in mind that you have your goals of what you're trying to establish for that day, and focus on those. If you have those moments where conversations will come up, if it comes down to the engineer having to needing some time to focus on something, then allow them to focus on that without your UPMs distracting them. It's cool to have conversations, but make sure that they are kept to a minimum, and try to keep the conversations productive in regards to what needs to be done with the music there. You can hang out outside of the studio, but once you're inside the studio, again, you are paying for that time, so try to make the best use of it. When you're in the studio, try to have your phone on silent, or at least on vibrate. Now, as much as this may be your means of communication with the outside world, when you're in the studio, you're supposed to be focused, and you're supposed to be paying attention to make sure that you're getting things done, and you don't want notifications popping up here and there and distracting everybody from the process of creating what they're supposed to be creating. As well too, don't be on Instagram taking pictures of everything and so on and so forth, or on Facebook and so on and so forth. You want to make sure that you are connecting with your fans, but at the same time though, don't connect with your fans to the detriment of your product that you're trying to create, your art that you're trying to create, or even to the detriment of your relationship with the people who you work with. It's very important that you respect the environment that you're in. The recording space that you're in is essentially somebody's home, and the same way you would want someone to come into your home and respect it and not leave garbage, not damage things or break things, and don't do that there. Don't put your feet up on furniture or anything like that. Like, treat it like as if it was at your house, and that way the relationship that you have with the engineer or with the studio is something that is long-term, and someone who sees that you respect that this is their place of work and also their home will be someone who will want to work with you in the future. Lastly, I think it's very important to stay away from conversations that have anything to do with politics or religion or anything like that within the studio. The worst thing you could do is say something that completely kills the vibe, completely kills the mood. Then all of a sudden, you're now working with someone who feels offended by something that you said that could have totally been avoided. Conversations like that, reserve them for other times. If you're in a place of business, and treat it no different than when you're at work, where certain conversations are not appropriate. So keep those conversations to times where you can talk with people who you know don't mind engaging in those conversations. But if you're in a place of employment, then keep conversations about politics or anything like that that may create hostile moments outside of the studio. Okay? In closing, if you found this video to be informative, if you found that you were more knowledgeable by the time the video was done, then please click the like button, comment, share, pay it forward in some sort of way, whether it be adding to a playlist, whether it be sharing it on Facebook, whether it be tweeting it, whether it be whatever it may take to just get this information out to other people who may be in need of it. It is very important that we take this information and we share it with as many people as possible so that this person's experience could add to the information that's there, and then that person may also be someone who ends up educating you at some point in time. As well too, don't forget, did I say subscribe? Yeah, I think I did say subscribe, but if I didn't say subscribe to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, which is youtube.com/Arlo Maverick. As well too, you can find me on social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and yeah, just make sure you support.